Our grandmas knew things that almost no one knows today. Simple autumn hacks that make your home cozier, cleaner, and cheaper. And the surprising, many of them work better than modern products, but hardly anyone uses them anymore. Right away, I'll show you why you shouldn't forget them. Grandmas just knew how it's done, so subscribe to our channel before you forget again. And now, have fun with their best autumn hacks. Natural autumn decor from branches, leaves, and cones. Back then, autumn was no decor trend, but a feeling. When the light became golden and the wind drove the first leaves over the yard, Grandma went out, an old basket on her arm. She collected what nature gave: branches, acorns, cones, leaves in all colors. At home, she laid everything in an old bowl, so unassuming and yet full of life. The room got immediately this warm, calm tone that no bought decor ever achieves. Nothing glittering, nothing artificial, only nature that did its work. One felt the transition of the season, saw how the summer lingered, and the winter already quietly knocked. Whoever has experienced that once understands. Beauty does not arise from effort, but from attention. Dried apple and orange slices as window or lamp decor. When outside the air smells of damp wood and the sun falls flat through the window, inside begins the scent of apple and orange. Grandma cut the fruit into thin slices, laid it on baking paper, and pushed it into the oven. Hours long pulled a warm, sweet scent through the house. Later, she hung the dried slices at the window where they glowed in the light like amber. The room got a softness that made words superfluous. It was as if autumn itself held its breath briefly. Everyone who passed by felt this calm, smelled the fruit, and saw how the sun played in it. A simple picture that changed the whole room, unhurried, honest, and of a plain beauty that remains. Warm, dimmed light for autumn evenings. When the days became shorter, the light in the house changed. It was no coincidence that Grandma never turned on the glaring ceiling light in the evening. She placed a lamp on the table whose shade made the light soft. The room got depth. Shadows danced on the walls. On the stove hummed the kettle. Somewhere clattered a spoon in a cup. This warm light drew the family together, made the day smaller, and the closeness bigger. It was the counterpart to the cold gray outside, a quiet protection against the darkness. To this day, such light changes the mood. One speaks calmer, breathes deeper, feels secure. So simple it was to bring autumn into the house, through a bit of warmth in the right light. Drape blankets and patchwork quilts visibly. On every sofa lay a blanket, no one that came from the store, but one that carried story. Grandma had sewn it herself, often from old garments that were too good to throw away. Cotton, wool, sometimes even linen. Every piece carried the memory of a person, of a time. The blanket lay never perfectly folded, but so that one could grab it immediately. When autumn came, it was the heart of the living room. It brought color, structure, life into the room. Children wrapped themselves in it. Adults laid it over the knees. And while outside the wind went through the trees, the home felt a bit warmer. Such blankets made the difference between house and home. Autumn basket with apples, pumpkins, and nuts. On the table stood a basket woven from light willow wood, filled with what autumn gave. Apples with matte shine, small pumpkins, nuts, sometimes a few dry corn cobs. No decorative object, but stock and adornment at the same time. Grandma changed the content if something was missing so the basket stayed alive. It smelled of earth, of cellar, and of freshly harvested fruit. In its simplicity lay something soothing. One saw what the garden had given and grasped that enough was there. The basket was a piece of order in the change of the season, a small reminder that abundance does not lie in buying, but in harvesting. Whoever looked in felt autumn, visible, tangible, and honest. Design wind lights with natural materials. When the evening came and the daylight slowly faded, inside began the play of the small lights. Grandma fetched old jam jars from the cabinet, washed them out, and filled the bottom with chestnuts or pine cones. A tea light in, a band of jute around the edge. Done was the wind light. It stood on the windowsill, on the kitchen table, or outside in front of the door. The light broke on the leaves, threw patterns on the wall, and made every room softer. Nothing about it was ostentatious, yet it had an effect that one didn't forget. It was the light of the transition that welcomed autumn and transformed the home into a small world of warmth. Autumn cleaning, clean windows, and prepare radiators. Shortly before autumn started, for Grandma, the autumn cleaning began. Windows open, fresh air in, the scent of vinegar and soap in the whole house. She washed the panes until the light fell in clear again. With newspaper, she polished after until everything gleamed. Afterward came the heating on, vented, dusted, ready for the cold days. Outside the trees colored, inside order was created. It was as if the house breathed through, as if it prepared for the silence of winter. When at the end everything was clean, Grandma sat with a tea at the window. She looked out and knew her home was ready for the darker time. Vinegar water as natural cleaner. Vinegar was Grandma's secret weapon against dirt. No colorful bottles or scent promises, only a simple means that did what it should. A shot of vinegar in warm water, a rag, and already windows, tiles, and work surfaces gleamed. The smell remained briefly, the result long. It was cleanliness without effort, almost self-evident. Grandma understood that one doesn't need much to create order. She polished with newspaper after until the light broke in the glass. When the sun fell through the windows, one knew everything was done. This simple mixture of vinegar and water was more than a cleaning agent. It was a piece of old reason that works to this day, because it is honest, plain, and effective. Salt as helper in the kitchen. In Grandma's kitchen, an open bowl with salt always stood, not only for seasoning, but also for cleaning. If fat splashed on the stovetop, she reached for it, sprinkled a fine layer over the still warm spot, and let it act briefly. The salt pulled the fat up and prevented that something burnt in. Afterward, a damp cloth sufficed, and the stove looked new again. It was this simple logic that characterized Grandma's household. Everything had its purpose. Everything was at hand. Salt was more than an ingredient. It was a tool of every day. And exactly therein lay its power, unassuming but indispensable. Clean windows with newspaper. Window cleaning was no big event at Grandma's, but part of every day. She needed no special means for that, only warm water, some vinegar, and old newspapers. The rustle of the paper belonged to it like the scent after soap and fresh air. With practiced movements, she wiped the glass, rubbed after, until the sun mirrored in it. The printer's ink provided shine. The paper took up every moisture. When she was done, the room acted brighter, almost friendlier. So simple was the principle. Use things that are already there and use them right. It was no cleaning act, but an expression of clarity and the wish to let the home breathe. Tea bags against shoe odor. After a long autumn walk, Grandma placed the shoes at the window so they could breathe. Then she reached into the tea can and laid in each shoe a bag. The tea took the moisture up and left a light, clean scent. In the morning, the shoes were dry, the leather supple, and the air in the hallway clear. For Grandma, that was self-evident. She knew the value of such small routines that worked unassuming. Nothing was wasted, everything had its purpose. Even a tea bag fulfilled more than one task. In this simplicity lay a knowledge that has proven itself, a kind of everyday cleverness that shows solutions are often already there. One must only recognize them. Oat or milk, bath against dry skin. When the skin became dry in autumn, Grandma didn't reach for creams, but for the pantry. Oats and milk were her answer to cold and heating air. A handful of oats came into a cloth bag that she laid in the warm bath. The milky liquid colored the water, made it soft and scented. After the bath, the skin felt smooth, without tensions, without burning. Milk, fat, and oats acted together, completely without additions. It was care that came from experience, not from packaging. Grandma knew that the simplest things are often the most reliable. This knowledge, unexcited and down to earth, was part of her every day, and perhaps the secret why her skin never was rough even in winter. Warm water with honey and lemon for sore throat. In autumn, as soon as the air became rougher, Grandma reached for the honey jar. A spoon of it went into a cup with warm water, in addition some freshly squeezed lemon. The scent was sweet and clear, the taste mild and soothing. The honey calmed the throat, the lemon brought freshness and helped with breathing. Grandma swore by this mixture. It often stood ready before someone complained of scratching in the throat. No recipe from the book, but tested knowledge, passed on from generation to generation. While outside the wind pulled at the windows, she sat in the kitchen, the cup in the hand, satisfied because the simplest is often the best. So tasted home remedy. Warm, effective, and real. Ginger tea for the stomach. After a heavy autumn meal, Grandma didn't reach for pills, but for ginger. A piece of root, peeled and sliced, went into a pot with hot water. The scent was strong, lightly sharp, almost invigorating. While the tea steeped, the air in the kitchen cleared. A spoon of honey rounded off the taste and brought warmth into the body. The tea did good, not only to the stomach, also to the mood. Grandma said always ginger brings order into the belly, and she was right. After a few sips, one felt lighter, more awake, ready for the evening. It was a simple means, yet it acted, as reliable as the rhythm of the seasons itself. Warm milk with nutmeg or cinnamon before going to bed. Evenings, when the light was dimmed and the work of the day lay behind her, a small pot of milk stood on the stove at Grandma's. She warmed it slowly, stirred a pinch of cinnamon in, and sometimes a little nutmeg. The scent spread in the room, sweet and warm, like an invitation to rest. It was her means against cold nights and restless thoughts. The milk satiated and made tired. The cinnamon brought security. Grandma knew that sleep doesn't come by chance, but from small gestures. Whoever drank this milk slept firmer, awoke softer, and felt that warmth comes not only from blankets, but also from the cup in the hand. Hang wool or knitted scarf ready. In the hallway always hung a scarf, thick, soft, hand-knitted, sometimes with a stitch too many or too few. Grandma laid it there where everyone could see it. Whoever left the house grabbed it, almost automatically. The scarf was no jewelry, but reminder that warmth is more than heating air. It smelled of outside, of wood, of wind, sometimes also of chimney smoke. Evenings it hung again at its place, lightly moist, ready for the next day. So the entrance stayed alive, not tidied like in the catalog, but inhabited. A simple scarf, but full of meaning. It stood for preparation, care, and the small lead that experience gives one before the cold. Oatmeal as warming autumn breakfast. When the morning was cold and the breath stood over the stove, Grandma stirred in the pot. Oats, milk, a pinch of salt. More she didn't need. The porridge became slowly thick, steamed, scented after warmth. She gave apple pieces in, sometimes cinnamon, rarely honey. The breakfast was simple, but it held the whole morning. Children came with red cheeks from the schoolway, sat at the table, and the porridge already waited. Nothing about it was elaborate, yet everything about it was right. The food of a time that was frugal, but rich in sense. A spoon of it, and one felt that the day began reliably, nourished by something that arose from patience and habit. Save vegetable remnants for broth, in Grandma's kitchen, nothing was wasted. When cutting vegetables, peels, stems, and stumps didn't land in the trash, but in a pot. From what others threw away, the beginning of a strong broth arose. Celery, carrot remnants, leek, and parsley gave taste. Water and thyme did the rest. It bubbled quietly on the stove. The scent pulled through the whole house. The broth was poured off, filled into glasses, and stood later ready for soups and sauces. Every portion was different, always honest, always homemade, so from waste became stock, from remnants food. Grandma called that no frugality, but reason, and exactly that was it. Simple cleverness that carried every day and never went out of fashion. Store apples and pumpkins cool and dark. In the cellar, it smelled of wood, earth, and sweet fruit. There Grandma stored her apples and pumpkins, carefully layered in boxes, every fruit with distance, so nothing rotted. She chose only the best pieces, checked them with the hand, and laid them in cool darkness. That was no luxury, but survival with system. Weeks long the fruit stayed fresh, the pumpkin firm, the stalks reliable. In winter, she fetched then what she needed. An apple for the cake, a pumpkin for the soup. It was a cycle that worked because patience and observation were part of every day. So security grew not from money, but from knowledge, care, and a good seller. Stock up on preserved autumn vegetables or applesauce. Autumn was for Grandma the time of preserving. Apples, pears, pumpkin, or red beet. Everything the garden gave was processed. It steamed over the pots, glasses clinked, spoons stirred. The smell of sugar, vinegar, and fruit filled the whole house. It was work, but also anticipation. Every glass was a small stock for the cold season, a piece of summer in the shelf. When snow fell outside, Grandma opened one of it, and the scent after autumn returned. This preserving was more than housework. It was memory in glasses, firmly closed and ready when one needed them. A system from diligence, experience, and the knowledge how to make time preservable. Air wool or knitted blankets outside. On clear autumn days, Grandma hung her wool blankets out in the garden. Over the line, they swayed in the wind, heavy from nights and warmth. The sun pulled through the weave, took the moisture with, and left this special scent. A mixture of wool, air, and time. It was no wash day, but care in her way. Fresh air did what no detergent managed. Afterward, she tapped the blankets out, folded them carefully, and laid them again on the sofa. They smelled of outside, of autumn, of order. So simple was the principle. Let things live before one replaces them. Every blanket became so a piece of story, preserved with patience and an open window to the sky. Mend holes in clothing with needle and thread. If clothing was worn, Grandma didn't take it right away from the cabinet. She sat at the window. The light fell on her lap, and she reached for needle and thread. A small hole meant for her no end, but work that was worth it. With calm hand, she pulled the thread through the fabric, stitch for stitch, until hold arose again. The movements were precise, almost self-evident. It was a gesture of preserving, not of postponing. Every mended sock, every repaired shirt told of mindfulness. This attitude saved not only money, it created also bond to the things. Grandma knew what she held in hands, time, effort, and value, firmly sewn in the fabric of every day. Hot water bottle or heated brick against cold feet. Before winter really came, Grandma prepared the bed. In the kitchen, she warmed a brick on the old stove, not too hot, just enough that it stored warmth. Then she wrapped it in a clean cloth and laid it at the foot end of the bed. Whoever slipped in later felt immediately the stored heat, dry, even, soothing. Later came the hot water bottle, modern, but with the same purpose. It was one of those ideas that never wore out. It gave calm before the light was extinguished and made falling asleep easy. For Grandma, that was warmth that counted, not that from the socket, but that one understood to preserve. Bake bread yourself and use remnants. When bread was baked in Grandma's kitchen, the whole house smelled of it. The dough rested under a cloth, the air was warm, the table dusted with flour. From simple ingredients arose something that satiated and brought together. She knew the right measure, felt the moment when the dough was done. The bread went into the oven, rose, got crust and color. Later, she cut the first slices, still warm, steaming, pure every day, with weight. Leftover bread was not disposed, but dried, grated, or processed to dumplings. Nothing was lost. In this work stuck a calm that transferred. Bread baking was for Grandma no effort, but a piece of self-understanding that satiated, in double sense. Hang autumn herbs and flowers to dry. In late summer, a small forest of herbs hung in Grandma's kitchen. Thyme, sage, peppermint, carefully bundled, upside down on a string. The air was filled with scent, warm and spicy, a remnant from summer. She dried the plants for winter, for tea, soups, or simply for the smell after garden when snow lay outside. The herbs cracked lightly between the fingers when they were dry, ready for glasses and cans. Over the windowsill hung the work of whole days, conserved through patience. Grandma did that not because it looked beautiful, but because it made sense. So summer stayed in the house, long after the fields were empty and the wind went through the trees again. Moisten warm rooms with damp cloths or water bowls. On cold days, a small clay bowl stood on Grandma's heating. In it shimmered water that slowly evaporated while the stove warmed the room. She knew that heat alone didn't suffice. The air should remain soft so skin and breath got through winter lightly. Sometimes she hung damp cloths over the radiators, the scent after freshly washed fabric mixed with the smell of firewood. The windows fogged lightly, the house breathed, plants stayed strong, furniture kept their shine. So simple was her principle. Keep the air in balance before it becomes too dry. This method needed no machines, only attention and the understanding how warmth and life belong together. Knit and mend for the winter stock of clothing. Grandma often sat with a basket of wool at the kitchen table. The clicking of the needles accompanied the evening like an even beat. From loose threads became socks, hats, and sometimes sweaters that held years. Nothing about it was hurry. Everything was routine and skill. One saw how something warming grew from patience. Old garments that had holes disappeared not. They got new threads, new durability, new dignity. The knitting was no hobby, but preparation for winter, hands-on and forward thinking. Whoever sat next to Grandma learned that warmth does not arise in the stove, but in the hands of those who provide. So grew stock, protection, and memory. Stitch for stitch, evening for evening. Use chestnuts and acorns for crafting or decorating. After long walks, Grandma brought the pockets full of chestnuts and acorns home. On the kitchen table was sorted, polished, stuck. From toothpicks, wire, and fantasy arose small figures, animals, or wreaths. The smell after fresh wood and damp leaves lay in the air. The stove crackled in the background. It was no crafting after plan, but joy at doing, a game with forms and ideas. Everyone joined, children, neighbors, whoever was just there. In the end, the table lay full of small artworks, crooked, colorful, alive. These things didn't hold forever, but they remained in the head. They reminded how beautiful it is to create something with the hands, without goal but with heart. Thread apple rings, herbs and mushrooms on string and let dry. When outside the sun stood lower and the days shorter, Grandma's kitchen filled with the scent of apples. On the table lay thin slices, next to mushrooms and herbs. With needle and thread, she pulled everything on a string, calm and careful. The rings hung at the window. The light shimmered through them as if summer wanted to greet once more. After a few days, they became dry, firm, light. In glasses and bags, they waited then for winter, for tea, compote, or a quick snack. Grandma knew how to create stocks without machines and effort. She used what was there and made future from it, edible, scented, preserved in its whole simplicity. Autumn was for Grandma no season, but an attitude. Preparation, warmth, patience, all that lay in her gestures. These old ways show that simplicity never becomes outdated. Perhaps a bit of this calm, this sense for the essential sticks in you. If you feel that, then try one of these old ways yourself. Make your home warm with things that are real, with apples, light, and time. If you like this video, leave a subscription to not miss any of our next stories. Write in the comments which memory touched you the most. And don't forget, sometimes what was good yesterday is exactly what is missing today again.